right, James, great to be here. Thanks for taking some time to talk with me. It was a wonderful visit you just hosted earlier this week, and really had a great time to meet you and your team. Want to give folks who have not been to SAS a chance to learn a bit about you and the school and this role. And so just starting there, would love to hear a bit about your background as a educator and a school leader and what brought you to SAS.
So, I began my tenure now just about 2 years ago. I was hired actually in the fall, late or early fall, I should say, of 21, but assumed the position in the middle of the Shanghai lockdown as my predecessor was heading out a little bit early. So, very weird world and how I arrived here with regards to sort of a virtual head of school, virtually appointed to the position. So everything crazy from that. As far as why did I choose? I chose the school because it was the best fit with regards to the board. I feel that anybody coming to work needs to understand that we have a high functioning board, fully committed. They do their homework, they pay attention. They're clear about boundaries. And so I feel very, very strongly that we're in a very good place. As far as the school itself, it is, it has a reputation of its own, and I suppose we'll elaborate on that a little bit further. My background is, so I've been head of school now for the better part of 14 years, almost 15 years, and been a school administrator for right around 20. I have worked to help build a school from the ground up called Island Pacific Academy in Hawaii. I was the head of school at the Baldwin School of Puerto Rico in Guaynabo, which is a suburb of San Juan, for 9 years, where we weathered many storms, literally and figuratively. But in addition to that, we implemented the full continuum of the International Baccalaureate, which was the first time that had been done in the history of Puerto Rico. So there was no IB presence in Puerto Rico, and then there certainly was no continuum presence. So there was a lot of feathers in the cap there for my amazing team. So I think that gives a bit of a sense. My academic background, if people are so inclined, is I am officially a historian of science with a focus in epidemiology and virology. So I guess the universe has a sense of humor that nearly 30 years on, that actually was a valuable thing in the age of the pandemic. In addition to that, I have done significant research in cognitive science, where some of my most recent graduate work has been. So that gives you a little bit of sense of me. Been married for 33 years to the love of my life and best friend. We have two very tall, smelly adult children. That are much larger than me, which is hard to do because I'm not exactly a small human being, but I guess that's us. And when we are away from here, we spend a lot of our times at our ranch in the Colorado mountains. So we are, I guess, mountain people at a distance. So that's a little bit about me, about the school, and how we got here.
That's super. Appreciate that. Just the school itself is such an amazing environment. Both campuses are unique. Both campuses are part of a single school structure, the
Yes.
Shanghai American School. And just talk a bit about that. I mean, for somebody who's never walked on those campuses and sort of what they would see in the hallways and just the love of learning and the joy and the excitement and at the same time the enterprise nature that is SAS, and kind of just what stands out to you as you walk around the campus.
Well, just to give you a little bit of a sense, we have two campuses that are separated by right around 63 kilometers, one to the south and east of the city, and one sort of in the northwestern quadrant of the city, and aptly named Puxi and Pudong, which literally just means on either side of the Pu River, east and west. Our campuses are both significant in scale, so they're each just shy of 60,000 square meters under roof line, and that's only the built environment. That does not include the broader campus grounds itself. We are very well equipped, and yet there's plenty of opportunities for further developments and change, and we're in the middle of a 10-year facilities development plan, which we launched last year. And we have the broad framework with a refocusing away from simply adding to amenities and moving really into the realm of how does space relate to teaching and learning. As part of this as well, our two campuses have distinct communities, as you might guess. And so we're constantly working to ensure that we have an overall school concept of the sort of the umbrella philosophically in terms of our mission, our core curricula, et cetera. We are large enough to be able to offer everything. And for a while, that was kind of the value proposition, and we're moving away from the the +1 and doing some deep dives into what should learning look like in this day and age. So we're taking a more scientific approach and a kind of a social sciences framework for that. We're using a logic model to evaluate a whole framework for change over time, how we evaluate our programming, what that looks like, how we ensure that whatever it is that we've decided to do, we're actually doing as we planned, and then how we evaluate those programs over time. So that's a lot of the work that's going on behind the scenes. We are just shy of 700 total employees as an organization. So we're relatively large. Of that, about 440 are teaching staff. We have an additional 500 people that support us every day across the two campuses between our cleaning crews, our bus drivers, et cetera. We have a fleet of around 214 buses that run throughout the city, and the better share of them are EV. So we feel pretty good about that. As far as our organization itself, our annual scores and those sorts of things that are important for people to know would equate to the very best schools in North America and Europe. So our kids are very, very competitive. Our kids themselves are just wonderful. So if you have been in and around Asia and China, you know that there is an ethic of education, and there is a focus on learning, and there is a real respect not only for the process of learning, but educators themselves. And then our kids are just, they aspire, they work hard, they make it easy to fall in love with them. It's a real honor. And frankly, one of the questions is, are they so amazing because of us, or are we amazing because of them? And the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle. So it is quite the honor. We are very well provisioned. We are in a spectacular place in terms of our stability as an organization, even though a number of our local schools are struggling a bit with many of the changes. We've largely been insulated from that because of our reputation as an exceptional school within the region, but also our scale and the fact that we had a head start on everybody else. So we're the oldest school in China and the largest school in China. So we feel very, very privileged, and we don't take that for granted. We're humbled by our resources. We feel very good about where we're going. We have a strong leadership team that we've been putting together. We have had substantive change in terms of our total staffing, but that's actually really allowed us to grow as an organization. We're not stuck in time. We're also having important conversations at the level of the board with regards to what are the implications for artificial intelligence, disruptive technologies, and how is this going to reframe learning in the near future. So a lot of exciting stuff is going on here. We're in a very strong place with a large cash reserve, very stable, and with really good relationships with both the US and the local governments. So feel pretty good about our organization and feel our reputation is well earned. And with that said, lots of opportunities to work and grow and make this an even better organization.
Outstanding. And you talked about relationships, and of course that is a nice segue to the director of HR, which is all about the humans, the adults, and the relationships there within. You've had an outstanding HR director who's currently in the post, and she'll be leaving at the end of June. Just talk about, for somebody who is excited to work there and loves that mission and what the school is about, a little window into, for you, what are some important priorities for this position, how it is going to connect to the mission, and what's sort of coming up for the next director of HR.
So I have to start by saying that whoever is chosen for this role and chooses us, we understand that that's a two-way street, that they're going to fill some important shoes. So our outgoing director, Ilaria, has spent the last 2 years with a rather substantial list that she and I put together really making sure that an organization of our scale was fully up to date with regards to its policies, its practices, the consistency of those. And all of this really was born from the idea that when we are clear about the rules of the game, that's the fairest we can be, and we consistently apply those rules for all. So immense work has been done over the last 2 years. We just had a full update and revision where we got a legal review of our policies and practices and SOPs with around HR. We had a full board revision process. So all of that has been done. Lots of protocols and other kinds of systems that weren't in place are now in place. We have dramatically upgraded our hiring procedure and the whole arc of that with child safety and child safeguarding, and so we have a really overall solid process. There's also the advantage of we are way out ahead in terms of compensation of almost all peer schools on the planet. So I don't say that gently, but we're within a handful of schools that pay at the top of the market for the world. And as a result of that, we are a desirable location. Now, that being said, we're also a school that when you arrive in August, you basically lace up your track shoes and you run until June and then fall into the summer exhausted. There's good exhaustion, there's bad exhaustion. And what we're trying to do is make sure that people understand that, yeah, you're going to do a lot of work between the polls, but it's the good work. It's the kind of work that's exhilarating. We are still working through some traditional historical problems in HR. Some of those include that the local population hasn't always been compensated in the same way that expats have been. This is not a new story for those in international schools around the world. So to the degree that we can create greater equity, we are doing that in a way that's sustainable over time. We're committed to that. With regards to our DEIB sort of work, and we intentionally choose diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging rather than social justice because we do have to honor our political context. And there's some sensitivities around that kind of language. The end goal is the same. So either way, the moral and professional purpose of it does not change. But with regards to that, so we're working on trying to, again, improve equity for our overall staff, be more consistent with regards to how we treat our adults, how we recruit our adults, to be more comprehensive in how we throw that net out into the world. We do consider diversity as part of it, in terms of we want diversity of thought, we want diversity of experience, we want diversity of culture and language and all of that, because that makes us stronger. At the same time, we balance that against the needs of the school to be an American style education. And so we're still working through exactly what we mean about that in the current iteration. But that does have an impact for all of our adults who are working within the organization. And what we mean by that. And so our profile of a teacher and how that evolves over time, and our profile of other staff members. I think that the big next steps for HR are not that we don't have real problems, and they're out there. And we've got a lot of the systems now in place. We've updated that to where they're current, and they are responsive to our current needs. We have other opportunities like our staff councils and different engagements, and we do a variety of different surveys through anonymous channels. We're building some other frameworks within the organization, especially on the business operations side, that will further allow us to, again, be consistent with our policies and practices, be as efficient as possible, but really redirecting us towards a customer service orientation internally towards each other, and how we support each other in achieving our overall mission of teaching and learning. So there's lots of good work to be done. We're coming out of a disruptive period of COVID, but we've stabilized in that area. What I need in the next person, and I say that with that very direct space, not as head of school, but the natural connection between the director of HR and the head of school is very, very strong. It's been wherever I've been within my career. We have to have lots of hard conversations. We have to find ways forward that are fair. We have to be willing to challenge each other. So I need somebody who is very much human-centered. who understands that we have to find the way to balance between the role of advocacy. So how are we ensuring that we are caring for our adults, and also accountability, right? So living in that strange world where you're both the carrot and the stick in this process, but doing that whereby we can have, when it's appropriate, the hard conversations, but we can do so in soft ways, allow people to leave with their dignity intact, create spaces whereby it's really about growth. And at times we still have to hold people to great account. And so we do that by carefully thinking about our moral purpose, carefully thinking about our practices and systems, thinking about the implications of a decision for a whole group of people, as opposed to only in that sort of the one-offs and individuals that lead to inconsistencies. Having the willingness to be wrong and change our thinking, and invite as many inputs into that process as possible, with the idea of we're chasing the best decision, as opposed to deciding who gets to make that decision. So you'll find a group of people that want to work with the support of and support the director of HR. We are sad to see our director go, but feel excited about the opportunity to be engaging with a new director. Going forward as well, it's opportunity to keep growing into what our new concept of HR is, again, where we have that nice balance between the advocacy role, the compliance role, and the accountability functions, which are at the center of human resource management. So you're not alone in that. Whoever it is who finally gets this position, you're going to have a large support group and a very veteran support group. I think the other thing you would need to know is that our general leadership team, that is your closest working group, is a very thoughtful and well-versed group. So we are drawn from all over the planet, have among us hundreds of years in school experience and dozens of international schools of reputation. And so we're clear about our context, we're clear about the geopolitical pieces of that and the local choreographies that must take place. We're clear about the distinctions in terms of contracts and supports, and we're all veterans, having hired hundreds of people at this point within our career. That adds up to thousands across the lot of us. So you're not coming into it on your own. You're going to have a really pretty substantial support system. You're arriving at a point where we've done a lot of the heavy lifting on the structural and policy side of it. And now it's about advancing forward. I guess the final piece would be that there were a couple of big blowouts in the past. They were related to DEIB. We don't hide from them. There was also in the past, if you do your homework, there was a child safeguarding issue in the last 10 years. So what we have done is, instead, to be open and honest about that, to look to the best practices on the planet, to bring in all the additional systems and outside third-party supports to make sure that we get all of those things right to the degree that we can. And then we have open and honest conversations with each other. So we're at a point of feeling pretty good about where we're at. But we look forward to our new partner coming in, helping us to see what we're not currently seeing, and continue to advance the overall mission of the institution and our HR concept.
That's outstanding. Well, and you mentioned where we're at. Where we are is in Shanghai. And just as somebody who is an outdoors person, you said you're from the Colorado Rockies, or you have a mountain home. For somebody who's never been here, or just is thinking about coming here, talk about why this outdoors person, this sort of lover of the outdoors, has found a home here, and just maybe one little vignette of why life in Shanghai for a school leader has been so great.
Well, I think that first, let's start from the understanding that Shanghai is one of that handful of cities around the world that just is wow. It really is apart from what happens elsewhere. So I began with, you're not going to find any safer city on the planet. I mean, there's a handful of them, and obviously Singapore and Hong Kong and a few places, but this is a truly safe city where people feel comfortable having their young adolescents out until late. And we have to remind ourselves that when we go elsewhere in the world, that it's not quite so safe to allow those things to happen. So the city is very safe. It's generally really well run. Its transportation systems are very, very thoughtful. It is a city that's easy to get into and get out of with high-speed rail going northwest and south into the different provinces with flights across the country. And then, of course, our proximity of basically being somewhere between 2 and 4 hours from all of the rest of Asia proper, which means that, our schedule of longer breaks, which we have a number of, are quite lovely because it allows us to get out and about. And there's many stories of, we were in Bali or we were in Vietnam or Laos or Cambodia, Mongolia, Nepal, et cetera, et cetera. So it's quite lovely, that space. The city is a foodie's paradise. I believe we have the largest number of Michelin-rated restaurants in the world, all concentrated here. French cuisine and Chinese cuisine are just over the top spectacular, but there's no shortage of fun. I'm a big fan of a kind of a crazy local place. It's somewhere between a cabaret and a kind of a cool nightclub, rock club that does all kinds of fun stuff, and it feels just so out of place. But yet wonderfully avant-garde. Like all major cities have that kind of that West End or whatever. So it gives you a little bit of a feel of that. Museums are just spectacular. Lots of cultural events. Now that we're reopened, we're not sensing that lots of stuff is coming back. So we're seeing the theater and the shows and the traveling musical acts. Formula One is coming back. We actually do an in-city Formula race. Or F1 race. So there's just about everything you could want to do. And then, of course, as you head to the west, in like Huangshan, the Yellow Mountains and some of these districts, you're going to find some of the world's most beautiful real estates. And so if you're a hiker, if you're a backcountry kind of person, as you move to the west and south, you find, and north, you find just wonderful expanses of nature. You also, of course, get just history that goes back thousands of years. You're literally among people who have been largely a consistent linguistic and ethnic population for thousands of years, certainly as a geopolitical space. That being said, there's more than 6 ethnicities and I think 100 dialects of different languages spoken within China. So it is much bigger and much more diverse than people would think outside of the sort of the ethnically Han Mandarin-speaking peoples. And Shanghai is just the jewel of China. It's its largest, wealthiest city. We're right around 28 million people in the city itself, and the broader expanse, I think, is about 43 million. And yet it never feels like this. So if you've been in Mexico City or Sao Paulo, I should say, you'll find that it doesn't feel like that. You can actually get across this city with all those people in about an hour and 15 minutes, which would be unheard of on the 405 in LA or downtown in DC, and yet the scale of this is, I think, 6 times the size or 7 times the size of DC in terms of population. So it just gives you this sense of we're 4 times larger than Manhattan if you need to have of New York proper, if you just need to have a sense of scale, and yet it never feels like that. There's an immense amount of green space. China has done tons of work to improve the overall health of the city and of China proper. And so while we do worry about AQI, it's nothing like those past stories, and that you might hear from other parts of the world. We really live a very privileged existence. So why would I come here? The people of China are amazing. Our colleagues, our PRC colleagues, are just wonderful. But in general, they're helpful. They're supportive. People want to work with us. Shanghai is a very liberal city relative to maybe the broader context of China. So it allows you to have a really wonderful experience as an expat and yet be fully embedded to the degree that you wish to with language classes and cultural classes, et cetera. So we love it. And I look to be around here for a while because I just think the combination of the quality of people, the cultural experiences and the history of the space, and the advantages. It's just easy to live in Shanghai.
Well, looking forward to helping you find one more person to come live in Shanghai for the director of HR position. Been great to talk to you. Thanks so much for your insights, James, and really appreciate your time today.
Thank you. And to our potential candidates, we look forward to talking to you soon.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
So.